What is happening, family? Today is a really, really special day. See, here's the thing. Most people, when they build their business, they try to squeeze their life in between their business and they end up becoming a slave to their business. And that's the wrong way to do it. And I learned from my mentor who's here with us today that you're supposed to design your life and then your business supports the life that you want to create. So my name is Adrian McGee. What I do is I help businesses scale and grow their business while getting back their time. And I want to introduce my mentor, my brother who's coming here to give massive game today, Elijah Bowie. What's going on, brother? Tell the people about yourself.
Man, I'm happy to be here. Elijah Bowie. I've been in the industry for about 13 years now. And spent most of those 13 years behind the scenes helping a lot of the big names in this internet marketing space, specifically helping them build, train sales teams, and sell more high-ticket programs. And we shut all of that down about 5 years ago to help entrepreneurs sell their high-ticket programs, products, and services without sales calls, which has been pretty cool. So, it's been a cool journey. Responsible for over $70 million across different industries. And, it's my favorite thing to do is to help entrepreneurs experience freedom, not just financially, but emotionally, physically, through, an experience, an idea, something that they had. And so that's what I get to do, man.
Perfect. So what we're doing is we're preparing for a really big event that's coming in here in Columbus, Ohio. It's going to be the Freedom by Design workshop. Yep. And so I want to kick this off. We're coming straight off the presses today, Bowie. We're coming straight off the presses. What does it mean when we say a life by design? What is that?
So when I talk to students about making sure that your business serves you at a high level, that you live a life by design, it's about helping people understand that whatever you want out of life, whatever you want your day, your life to look like, understanding that your business that you create can fuel and create that. So for instance, for me, I'm a husband, I'm a father, right? Have 2 children. And I always wanted to make sure that I had a lifestyle where, I always say this, but like my favorite thing about my children is my children know me, right? And that doesn't just mean that, I'm in their life. It means that like I'm actually present with them all day long. And that's what I wanted out of life. But we also got to pay the bills, right? We also want to be able to go on trips and things like that. And so understanding that whatever I want out of life, whatever you want out of life, you can have, and your business can create that. And that's what allows you to live a life by design. And sometimes that changes from year to year, from seasons to seasons, but you can always achieve whatever that looks like as long as you have a business that serves you at a high level.
Yep.
Because most entrepreneurs are slaves to their business.
Okay. So when you say slaves, tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Like I said, 13 years, I can't tell you how many times I've been behind the scenes of a lot of big names and things like that, 7, 8-figure launches. But like they're stuck. Right. There's a lot of entrepreneurs, and this isn't one of those ones where they're going to raise their hands about, but they're running events, they're doing webinars, they're doing all of these things that you see them do, not just because they have some, sheer crazy work ethic, even though I'm sure they work hard. It's because they have to keep the lights on, right? They have a business model that says we got to go get 30, 40, 50, 60 new people every single month just to keep this on, just to pay the team, and so you're on this hamster wheel. It's a much bigger, more luxurious hamster wheel than, you used to come from, but it's still just a hamster wheel. And so they're stuck, they're trapped. And they're not really an entrepreneur, right? They are somebody who has a really high paying job, and they just happen to, be the signer on the documents of that job as well. And so that's what I mean by that.
Yeah, so that kind of takes me to another topic, right? Because one of the things that I learned from working with you is that, everyone is comparing themselves to other people, right? And one of the things that we see is there's a lack of real businesses out there, right? I think some of what we see, what's going on Instagram, what's going on YouTube, and we see like the flashing lights, we see the Lamborghinis, we see these different things. And so what happens though is that we see a lot of people make those type of investments, but they don't make the same investments into their business and their systems.
Right.
And so that's one of the biggest drivers that we see that creates that like that lifestyle where people are slaves to their business because they never invest into the systems. Now, when we talk about core systems for a business, right? What makes a business go from just a light coaching program that's they're selling courses on Instagram to being an actual business that can grow and be passed down for generations? What does that look like?
Yeah, well, you said it a little bit earlier. The key word that makes that is a system, right? And there's a difference, and there's a lot of, this word's actually thrown around in the industry a lot about plays. Run the play, this play, that play, all great, right? A Hail Mary in football is a play, but it's not a system, right? And a Hail Mary can work. It can work. You can, right? And that's how most entrepreneurs have this binder just full of random plays that they pull out and they do, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And so really all they're doing is controlled gambling. But ultimately what allows you to have a business, right? Apple, and I'll point in case, Apple, which is arguably the most successful company we've ever seen in the history of the world, right? Before any company hit $1 trillion, Apple had hit $2 trillion. And today it's a $4 trillion company. Earlier this year or last year, Apple released the Apple Vision Pros, right? The latest and greatest technology in augmented reality. Only problem with that is the Apple was issued and received the U.S. patent for the Apple Vision Pros the same year they released the very first iPhone.
Wow.
So what does that mean? Why did I bring that up as an example? Apple doesn't wake up on a daily basis and huddle up and say, what play are we going to run? What are we going to do, post, or say today to make this happen in the business? Apple has a system, right? Which means it's predictable, it's proven, it works repeatedly over and over again. And if I just have these random plays that can be successful at point, that doesn't mean I have a system. A system is predictable, proven, repeatable, and it sets things up, right? If you have a certain system in football, you may, right, come out and most offensive coordinators will script their first 20, 50 plays, right, 20, 25 plays of a game. Well, they're usually setting you up for something, right? There's a system. They're not just randomly doing things, and that's what most people don't have, most entrepreneurs don't have, and that's what really makes it a business, right? Because at that point, when there are systems and there's predictability and repeatability, now I can step away and it keeps functioning. I can sell that and someone else can step in and pick right back up. That's really what makes it a business, and that's why systems are so important, because without it, you're always just running around with your pants on fire.
Wow, that's so deep. And it's like when we think about systems, right? And the phrase I always use is system stands for save yourself time, energy, and money. And most entrepreneurs struggle to delegate. And so one of the first things that we have to do at times is we have to get rid of low value activities. Like everyone wants to hold on to the task they're working on like it's their baby, right? And so when it comes to growing, they never find the time to do things that matter the most, such as selling, for example. And so to give some background on like how Bowie and I actually connected, it was because I was looking for a way to get more leverage. I realized that there's a limited amount of time that we have in this universe, right? And there's an unlimited amount of customers, money, everything is abundant. But most people, especially entrepreneurs, they leverage the one thing that is limited to go after something that's abundant.
Right.
And so that kind of leads me to ask you about how you essentially helped me get out of my rut. I was stuck at between 30 to 50K per month. And I literally spent 3 days with you and was able to hit my first 6-figure month like the month after. And it was because I learned how to use leverage.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about leverage. Like, what does that mean? How can you get a higher output without giving more of your time, without even spending more money, right? Like, how can I get a higher output without adding more?
Yeah, so you hit the nail on the head, right? And it really depends on which part of your business you're looking at, on the specific leverage you're trying to create. But in regards to sales, as you mentioned, so what's interesting about a system by definition is it should create leverage, like you said, right? And what a lot of entrepreneurs don't realize is if I use a limited resource plus a limited resource, I can only experience and produce a limited outcome, right? So for instance, a lot of entrepreneurs use time which is limited. There's only so much time in an hour, in a day, in a lifetime, right? And then they'll use their time plus their energy. Well, you only have so much energy as well to expel in one time. So if I'm just always using too limited resources, I'm limited in what I can create in terms of an outcome. And so, and all of my areas and all the operations in our business, operations, sales, marketing, X, Y, and Z, we're always looking at, okay, sure, when you're starting out, you got to spend some time, you got to spend some energy. Once you've figured out something, how can we start creating a system so that it is leveraged? Sometimes that means automation. Sometimes it means other tools. Sometimes it means other people. Sometimes it means just using common sense and doing things like we talk about in sales regards to, if I have a sales presentation and I've figured out that this sales presentation is effective enough to get one person to, join and become a customer, why would I then take that presentation that I've figured out over many one-on-one conversations is effective and now only use it one-on-one? Because that's not leveraged anymore, right? I already spent that time and energy to figure out, hey, this is effective. Mm-hmm. Now I should take that presentation and that message and I should talk to people one-to-many, right? Which is, what we do with phoneless selling. And now I can leverage technology, right? Things like auto webinars, or I can do that live and, hold in-person events or things like that. And it's just, if not more effective, and start learning, oh, okay, this is something that I can plug in and make part of my ecosystem, right? There's that word again, that starts predictably producing something.
Mm-hmm. Man, you touched on something earlier. It's like, everyone wants to play, but no one wants the principle.
Yeah.
And I know one of the biggest principles that you've taught me is that the growth of a business, like everyone's looking for this like exponential growth, right? They're looking to go from, 10K a month to 150 in like 3 months.
Right.
And I know one of the things that you did was you corrected with me because I was looking to spend more money on ads.
Yeah.
And so this is actually going to spark up like some good conversation here. So I remember the time I was upset at you, right? So I remember I wanted to spend more money on ads. I'm like, hey, this is working. I need to spend way more money now.
Right.
And you told me like, yo, slow down. Right? You said slow down, because what happens with most people is that they see something works and then they're like, okay, now let me 4X my ad spend. Right. And then it doesn't work and they end up losing like all the profit that they made and things like that. And so one of the principles is like, when it comes to growing a business, it's very important for you not to get stuck in the noise.
Right.
And one of the biggest issues that we see is, again, we see the stuff on social media and it tells us that, oh, we can do it too. Mm-hmm. But the issue is when you kind of minimize your own results that you created because you're creating that comparison. Right. And as you know, like most people in the industry aren't telling the truth. So you're comparing yourself to lies, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell me about, like, you've mentored so many people. Mm-hmm. Tell me, like, what are the ways that you get people to understand, like, this is a real business? Like, this is not a hobby. This is not something that you have fantasized over and it's going to happen in 6 months. What do you say to people who need to slow down and create a real system?
I think it's about, like you're saying, just sharing the principles, right? For the people watching, there's a lot of, what everyone thinks they want is tactics, right? That you talk about running the play. Like, a tactic is what to do, right? And everybody wants to know what to do, what to say, what to do, what to say to make this outcome happen. And tactics, there's nothing wrong with them, but if I tell you what to do, which is a tactic, that's the play, and you don't know when and why to do it, the what is useless. The when and why to do something is strategy, right? Now, this is one level up from tactics, and a lot of people go to learn strategy, but the issue with that, the flaw, the weakness in a strategy alone is that, by definition, a strategy is something that I created or you created based upon a strategic advantage that I already own, right? So I'm looking at something that I have some unfair, unique advantage in. I'm creating a strategy around that. And so it's producing something for you or for and I can go share that with the public. But if you don't have the same strategic advantage as me, you can't produce the result, right? So what I always try to do with those entrepreneurs and help people realize is, I'd rather teach you a principle, because a principle by definition has to apply to all people at all places at all times. And the only thing that can happen when I find a principle and apply a principle is you experience the result that principle governs, right? Mm-hmm. So the reason that's so important, going back to your question, is when we find and apply a principle, and the principle that I would be trying to get them to understand for this real business, and you were talking about this growth, is the principle of compound interest. Because like you said, you think, and it does kind of temporarily when you think about it, it's like, oh yeah, I just spent, I spent $10,000 in ads, we produced 30,000 from it. Awesome. If we want to do 10 times on that, we just put 10 times more money in. But I always tell people, for instance, going back to a company like Apple, Apple has more cash on hand in their bank account than the US government. They're a $4 trillion company. If they wanted to be a $400 trillion company, why wouldn't they just spend more money on ads? Because that's not really how you compound something anyway, right? And so the compound interest principle basically says that there's these small things that I do that when I take care of them, right, and I'll give you an example here that everyone could do in their business, it starts to create this compounding result over time. So for instance, everybody watching this can guarantee that whatever business that they have, next year, this time, will be doing 40% more revenue. Which, if you were to go to Wall Street and you were to go bring the financials of a company and you say, hey, for the last 10 years, this company has increased their revenue 40% year over year, I mean, they would pour money into it. Mm-hmm. But that's actually really easy to do if you understand the principle of compounding interest. So instead of, hey, I just hit that 10K month, next month, 2 months later, I want to be doing 100K, we're going to 10X this, what you're actually looking for is a 3% increase, right? That's it, which doesn't sound very sexy, right? But for instance, let's just take overall revenue. And you would do this everywhere in the business. But let's say I want to keep growing my business. Well, what you'd really be looking for off that 10K month is a 3% increase, which is not really cool because that's only $300. Now, that's really easy to do. You say, well, that doesn't make me really excited. But do you realize if you just increase by 3% 3 months in a row, that's a 9% increase, right, in the quarter? Mm-hmm. Well, if you increase your revenue 9% 4 quarters in a row, at the end of the year, you would have a 36% annual income increase.
Wow.
Right? Mm-hmm. But here's what I love about a principle. It doesn't just stop there. So if you take something like, like a webinar funnel, for instance. Well, sure, we could increase our sales close percentage just 3%, and that would give us the extra $300 in this scenario. But I could also increase my show-up rate by 3%, right? Mm-hmm. I could decrease my lead cost by 3%. I could get 3% more open rates. 3% more clicks. So you see there's all these tiny little 3%, which are really easy to make that incremental jump in all these areas in our businesses that are a lever that starts creating this exponential increase. And if you were to do that all throughout your business just in 1 month, you'd come out with more than 3%. Right, you'd end up with 30, 40, 60%, but it happened not from me just spending 10 times more, it's from looking at this little 3% increase. And so it's principles like that I try to get people to understand, that, that compounding factor, when you look back, you go, wow, of course there was nothing else that could happen except for us to experience this.
Wow, when you break it down that simple, right? You took something where most people would say 3% increase. They're like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. They'll walk out the door instantly, right? But the way you just broke that down not only allows you to create a business that you actually enjoy, right? Because you have more control, you're minimizing your risk, right? And you're actually building a system, right? Like your business is becoming a system that is now serving your life when you apply those principles. And so that makes me wonder how most people we see out there, right? Everyone is worried about, oh, I need this type of funnel. Do I do webinar funnels? Do I do a lead magnet? Do I do freebies? Like we're looking at all these different funnels. And one of the things that I tell everyone is all of the strategies work. Like they all work, but it's about how do you actually figure out the strategy that just aligns with the life that you want to create. Yeah. And so one of the things that we see most entrepreneurs kill their success is because they'll do something right, everything will go well, and then all of a sudden, this thing called shiny object syndrome shows up, and they'll literally crush all of their results. Mm-hmm. So after you've worked with so many people, talk to me about like how much a funnel, like the funnel strategy does not matter. Tell me because that's the opposite of everyone's talking about, right? Everyone is one funnel away, or my cool strategy works better than this one.
Right.
Talk to me about that for the person that's confused on which funnel they should use.
Yeah, it's, and I understand why they're confused, right? It's because it's easy, because of what we just talked about, because the market is looking for that next play, right? What to do, what to say. It's really easy from the internet marketing standpoint to do something and kind of, jazz it up and say, hey, look, I got this new thing that no one's doing, and kind of run it to you and say, hey, this is what you need. This is what's missing. But like you said, what you have to realize in any of those things is, first and foremost, how can I know if a funnel is for me, right? For instance, and this will be good for the viewers because no one watching probably does this in their business anymore. There's, right here, just in downtown Columbus, there's, these corporate buildings, and there are $100 million businesses whose sole sales strategy, marketing strategy is cold outreach, right? Well, it's not that cold outreach doesn't work. It does work, right? I've actually consulted companies on that. In fact, there was a guy who had a landscaping snow removal business. He literally 10x'd his business, and I gave him a cold outreach strategy where he would just call up businesses. Right, it was for commercial. He would just call up businesses, and essentially the strategy was, hey, this is Elijah, with so and so company. We're just confirming that we're still on for you guys' snow removal, or your grass cutting, or your whatever the season was. Mm-hmm. And they're like, "Oh, we didn't know, we don't have that in our records anywhere." Hey, well, we got it over here that we were supposed to come and start doing snow removal or lawn cutting for. All right, do you guys still want it? You guys need it? That's pretty simple, right? Crazy. Well, they'd be like, yeah, I mean, we do, right? And then they would set it up there. So. My point being, cold outreach is an effective strategy, but it's not that, like you said, a strategy or funnel doesn't work. It's, does it serve you at the high level? That requires him to be on the phone, to take the reps. There's a lot of reject. If that's not something you want to do, you shouldn't go and run to that funnel or that X, Y, and Z. And so, like you said, because they all work, they do. Mm-hmm. But they may not work for you, meaning it may not serve you at a high level. And if it doesn't serve you at a high level, you're going to hate it, and you're not going to be able to maintain it, right? You're not going to be able to continuously put in the reps that are going to give you mastery, because that's how you master something.
Yep.
The definition of mastery is just when I can accomplish or perform something without conscious resources. So you've mastered tying your shoes because you can tie your shoes without looking at it, right? You don't need to watch a video and I'm trying to tie my shoes. And so that is why, it all works. But if you don't know, back to where we started with this, what you want out of your life, what you want your day, your business to look like, you can't really know what funnel strategy or system to do. And like you said, it'll be very easy to get distracted and jump into all these different things. And then you look up and you're really just kind of swimming in a circle instead of, sailing to new places.
That's so deep, because I think even when we have this event, right, we're that's one of the biggest focuses is helping people. Hey, the first step is not building a 7-figure business. Right. It's designing your life. How do you want your life to look? I work with so many people, and one of the things that they say is, oh, I want to make this much money. Right. And I instantly say, why? Oh, I just want to. It's just a goal that I have. Right. And it's they're putting themselves through so much stress and overwhelmed and never feeling confident that their business is giving them peace because they're not allowing it to. They don't even know what peace looks like. Right. Right. So I think that's huge, and I'm glad that we covered that part of the conversation. Now, something else, right? Another reasons that it's so funny. If you guys aren't ever mad at your mentor, then you don't have the right mentor. So another reason that I got upset is because, one of the principles you showed me was I was running ads, right? And my cost per lead, it's $5 or $7, right? I'm hyped. I'm going crazy about it. And then it's we start the event, and we start the sales event, and it's the audience is horrible, right? And so you're hey, first off, you're going so wide that like you're just letting anyone come into your funnel, right? And so one of the big mistakes that we see is everyone's like more numbers.
Yeah.
But is it the right numbers? And so what we did was we switched my messaging to focus on a specific person.
Yep.
And as you can imagine, that cost per lead went from $5 to $7 to $25 to $30, like instantly, right? So the expense of my business, it felt as though like quadrupled, like instantly, right? But then we immediately, like the room was 10 times better. I mean, the right person's in there. And it's not even just about like getting the right person that can pay you, right? I think anyone can build a business where they get people that can pay you, because like you don't even have to give people results, right? Like you can market your way up to 7 figures and like never get caught, right? You just switch your offer around and things like that.
For sure.
But I learned that like attracting the right person allows you to serve the right person, which allows you to get more results, which means that your business isn't stuck having to get 20 or 30 new clients every single month, right?
Exactly.
Like no one is building a business where you serve someone, they get a result, and they love it so much that they keep paying you over and over again. So can we talk about how that contradicts, though? That's like, I can't even say this word right. That contradicts with everything that we learn in marketing. Like we're always focused $2 to $3 per lead, right? $5 per lead. And if you go to someone and they're like, hey, my lead is $20, they're gonna look at you like you're crazy.
Right.
And it's like, what is an expensive lead, right? But talk to me about like how you had to overcome that and how you have to help so many people overcome that misbelief that cheaper is better.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it just goes back to principles, right? So, and a lot of entrepreneurs don't know this, but like in corporate businesses, they know this. It's the business that can spend the most to acquire a customer who will always win, right? In any industry. So if your business, the way it runs and your margins and X, Y, and Z, even if you're 7 years ahead of me and I'm just starting out, if you can only spend $3 to $4 to $5 to acquire a lead, let's say for instance, let's not even talk about cost of an actual customer, let's say to a lead, but I can spend 50, I'm going to end up, even though you have a 7-year head start, catching you and winning, because going back to the principle, does it ever get cheaper over time? Is it more expensive today to market and acquire customers, or is it less expensive than it was 10 years ago?
It's way more expensive.
It's more expensive, right? And that's always going to keep happening. More competition, more, right? It just always, the cost to acquire a market just gets more expensive. So if I'm always, as that's getting more expensive, trying to be like, well, I can only spend less and less and less, I'm literally running myself out of the competition. I have to be able to say, okay, the business who can spend the most, that's the principle. So when I look at that and I understand, okay, that's one thing, I then look at who are we talking to? And most entrepreneurs are trying to attract or talk to individuals who think a certain way, right? So mindset, or even financially, if they're trying to do financial qualifications. Well, and that's something you and I talked about, where it's like, it's called the top 1%. It's not called the top 50. So I'm like, hey, if you're looking for business owners who are experiencing this certain issue, which you really only experience at a certain point in your business, where you could easily turn around and spend $5,000, $10,000 on something without really thinking about it. Well, most businesses aren't in that by nature. So why would I think I'm going to put out an ad, and if 1,000 people see it, why would I expect 2, 3, 4, 500 of those people to opt in? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I should know right then and there I can't be attracting the right person, because this is a 1% problem, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where we make our fortunes. I, sent a message to students, this maybe even yesterday, talking about it. Like, if you want to create a fortune for you and your family, you need to either find a really expensive problem, right? Mm-hmm. And solve it for the people who can happily pay for it, right? Well, a really expensive problem, the more expensive the problem, less person who's most likely to have it, right? Or you need to solve a really, really common problem for really, really cheap, right? Like a Planet Fitness model or something like that. Well, most entrepreneurs, if I pick a problem that is that common and I have to solve it for cheap, usually there's so much competition that I can't really grow and create what I want, It's so there's its own competition there. So most people opt for, I want to charge high ticket. I'm cool with that, but the problem is they don't actually figure out what that real problem is and for who to find that small percentage. And like you said, when I know that by nature, of course my costs are going up. There's going to be less people who are experiencing this problem. But when I do find that person, because it's really costing them time, energy, effort, money, they will happily pay whatever I charge, and I don't have the hassles. I don't have to do financing a lot of times or payment plans. And like you said, we're also, depending on what type of business you're building, you have to think as well, okay, a lot of entrepreneurs are, like you were just saying, just thinking, hey, I spent $1, can I bring $3, $2, $3, $4 in? Okay, I'm fine with that, cool. But that principle tells us that if you go to a lot of these corporations, they're willing to lose money up front, right? Because they're not just trying to extract as much money from you in this one transaction as possible, because like you said, I may not even be able to get you a result. I'm probably not going to see you again, which is what most of these guys are doing, unfortunately. And I don't think that they're ill-willed. I just think it's hard to do things the right way. And if that's not the business, like I said, that leads me to have a business model where I need to keep switching offers, or I'm trying to get 30, 40, 50 new people every single month. Where, I have students who've given me testimonials that are like, I've paid Elijah hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that wasn't one transaction. It's over and over to the point where they say, whenever Elijah has an offer, I just pay money. I don't even need to know what it is, because every transaction I've had with him is paid out. This morning, I had a student message me, hey, when am I up with you? Because I want to make sure I renew, right? He's asking me when he can send me another $30,000. You see, like that's.
Yeah.
So like you said, if that's what I want, I'm not just looking for, cool, can I acquire Adrian for some money and he pay me some money today? I'm also thinking about, will Adrian still be paying me 4 years from now? And that's what I want. And so if we do that, if that's what's in mind, right, life by design, then like I said, my marketing's different. What I sell you is different, and it just keeps going and going and going. And the more we do that, like you said, again, the more leverage I have. And that's what the big companies do again, right? Apple, I'm an Apple guy. Apple people are Apple people. Every time Apple releases something, I just buy it. They got me, right? And that's what we're trying to create, is that loyalty. And most entrepreneurs never experience that.
Yeah, wow, that goes into such a deep topic, and it's so crazy because like we have a 2-hour conversation just about that, right?
Sure.
Like that's what's blocking most people from growing, is they don't understand that you shouldn't get a customer to pay you one time,
right?
And it's like it's even a mentality even like throughout our communities, right? Like, even when you go to a barber shop, like even a barber, like people do not switch their barbers. Like we just talk, like you live far out and you come all the way down here to go to your barber, right? You've probably been going to him for years. And same for me. I went to the same barber for 4 years. Right. But like, how come we don't see more barbers say, hey, come try out a cut for half off just so I could build that relationship with you? Like they think of the money like right now, and they don't look at like the long-term value that they're going to be able to get from a customer. So I think that's super, super powerful. And so we always, again, we talk about more numbers, right? And so one of the things I learned from you is quality is way better than more numbers. And I've literally seen you. I've been in rooms where you've been in rooms with 6 people and generated multi-6 figures, right? And like with just a few people in a room, whereas like even from my business, right? Like when I first started working with you, I was always focused on I need 50, 100 people in my webinars, right? And then but I'm only getting a few people to buy, whereas now I've switched it, I'm getting like 20 people in my webinars. Right. But it's a much better conversation. The audience is resonating with my message 100 times more. And it's like at the end of my webinars, people are like, I am in, give me the price. I'm ready to buy, right? And it's a completely different experience. One of those lessons that I think we got to talk about today is something called like symptom-based messaging. Yeah. Where I remember, and this is why like this is going to be amazing for the viewers. And I want to be very clear about something. Like me and Bowie, like we don't have a lot of followers on social media at all. And that's what impresses me most about Bowie, is because I think you have 10,000 like followers on Instagram, right? Like you never post. You probably post once or twice like every few months, right? But it's like, when it comes to promoting your business and getting those quality people in a room, how are you able to do that without a big following on social media?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the word we talked about earlier of understanding a system. And like I said, I want to be clear, there's nothing wrong with doing those things, but we talked about there's a limited amount of time. And so there's other people who spent their time constantly and consistently showing up on social media. Great. I spent that same amount of time figuring out how can I go to people who have no idea who I am and be able to turn that into a transaction, right? And so you get the results of the time you spent with those people. They have those major followings. People know them X, Y, and Z, but it's fickle, right? Social media is fickle, so you have to keep showing up, right? I know people who do lives every day at a certain morning, and and you have to keep doing this to be able to kind of stay relevant with this audience. And then there's me who every time we run something, it's completely cold, right? They have no idea who I am. And then at the end, I got like Brittany, for instance, I have people come in cold, go through our sales presentation and are like, wire $25,000, just like that. Wow. No problem, right? Don't know me from Adam. And so it's just like having a system, right? And so because we have a system, and we all know it takes time and energy and thought and just a lot to, and me, it's, honestly, it's probably because of like my temper, right? Like it would piss me off if I put out, when you put out a great piece of content and then it don't do what it's supposed to do. I'm like, I don't have time for that. That would make me mad. So I'm just not going to put it out at all, right? And rely on a system instead that can bring people in. I can deliver that same stuff and get the result I want and make it predictable. And that's leverage for me now. And so, like I said, that's how we're able to do that and why I don't have to do those things. And it goes back to just, again, a life by design. I don't want to have to be like, oh, I'm out. I got to be thinking about documenting what we're doing and, oh, let's do that again. Not saying there's anything wrong with that. I don't want to have to think about it. I just want to go and do, because people are like, I got to put out some content today to. Yeah. I just didn't want to do that. And since I didn't want to do that, I know I'm doing, you know what I'm saying? Like, and it just goes back to what we were talking about. If everything works, but is it aligned with your life by design? And that's, again, what even the event and stuff what we're putting out is like figuring that out so then you can create that business because like you talked about, and you put it perfectly, everyone always says they just want this number. But why? What's the number for? Yeah. Because you can live like a millionaire if you figure out what your freedom number is, right? And for instance, for you guys watching, like let's say, I never tell people, like you're saying, I never tell people to start with money. On a month-to-month basis, not just one time, right? On a month-to-month basis, what do you want your daily life to look like, right? Your week to look like, your month to look like. If you say, like for instance, my wife and I, we do probably 2 date days, a week. We've got 2 nannies that allow us to do that. We usually take the kids on vacation once a month. All these things that we want, right? Certain place you want to live. Like you figure out what you want your life to look like, and then you figure out how much that's going to cost. So let's say that cost me $40,000 to make that life happen. Well, if that's what I would do if there was $10 million in my bank account, and I create my business to serve us in a way where it produces $40,000 in a leveraged way, I'm living as if I have $10 million in my bank account without $10 million in my bank account then. So, like I said, you can do that really easily, but you have to figure out the life first, and then you figure out the number, and then, like I said, things just start compounding, and you end up with way more than that number anyway, but nothing about your life changes because you've always been living that freedom lifestyle, right? That life by design, and your business is fueling that. So
that was like a 5-minute masterclass right there. Like that was crazy, man. Okay, I'm loving this. So, I want to make sure we tackle something, which is talking about the mistakes that we see most people make in this space, right? Like, what are the things that they think that they're doing correctly, but it's actually very wrong, right? And I think one of the things that I see is like, I'll give you an example, messaging, right? So what I believe one of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make is their messaging is bad because they are literally attracting the person that they don't want to work with and they can't afford them. So the best example is the credit and funding space, right? This is a very growing space that we see a lot of beginner entrepreneurs jumping in right now. And I always tell them, like, hey, it makes no sense. You're literally saying, hey, if you have a bankruptcy, foreclosure on your home, I can help you remove this thing off your credit, right?
Right.
And then they get on 10 or 20 sales calls with people who have no money, like they have no desire to fix this issue, really. They just send you call out a problem that they have.
Right.
And so they're attracting all of these people who aren't qualified. And it's as simple as changing your messaging to, hey, do you have a job where your credit score doesn't, do you have a good job where your credit score doesn't reflect what you're being paid? That completely changes the audience that you're bringing in. So I know that's an example of like one of the biggest mistakes I see from the market, but you work with so many high level entrepreneurs. I mean, you've helped people literally hit 6-7 figure days. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the mistakes that they're making before they get to that point?
Yeah, you for sure. I agree with the messaging piece 100%. I would also say that in addition to messaging, it's not understanding that any tactic, strategy, or funnel that I'm using is supposed to be something that I add to my ecosystem, right? So what I mean by that is going back to what we were talking about where people say, well, I'm doing webinars, or I'm doing live events, or I'm doing challenges, or they're doing whatever, right? And what they don't understand is that anything that I do is supposed to just be a part of my ecosystem. And you know, people come to me for events, right? But I always try to tell people, a sales event, online, in person, right, multi-day or single day, those are cash infusion events. That is not a business model. It's a cash infusion event that you should be staples, right, in your business for sure, and you figure out the frequency for your business. That then I have and I build other things around it, right? Mm-hmm. So I should start building out this offer trifecta, because everything has pros and cons to it. I think that's a big issue where, like you said, even if it's working consistently for them, hey, we're crushing it with webinars or we're crushing it with challenges or whatever, they think just that one thing is it and don't realize that I should be building an ecosystem that one hand washes the other, because that's really how I protect myself and grow, you know, my business. And, you know, we have these different streams and things that come in. I think that's a big one. And then, yeah, the other one would be the messaging for sure. Just not understanding how messaging attracts people. You talked a little bit earlier about symptoms. They do a lot of problem-based marketing. But they don't think about what type of person that brings. And then even when you realize that, knowing how to fix it. Because like you were just saying, let's say that same credit repair funding space person, let's say they're using that exact same messaging. And they're getting those people who, like you said, why would I try to charge that person $10,000, $15,000 for a program to learn how to, you know, do whatever funding wise, when, like you said, the financial situation you're in literally says you don't have money to the point where you're behind on bills. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, oh, these people, they don't close. Well, sometimes it's not necessarily changing the audience all the time. If I want those people, sometimes I should change the offer. Mm-hmm. And I've told people this sometimes. Mm-hmm. I'm like, why are you trying to sell them $10,000, $15,000 anyway? Change the offer. You have the skill set, remove the stuff, get them in a spot where they can get the funding and get paid out of the funding, right, later, for instance. So now I can work with the masses who are experiencing that, because maybe it's easy to get those people. I can help a lot of people. It's cheaper ad spend wise, but I know which lever to pull here, where I just change the offer to meet these people where they are. And now I can have a 100% close rate, because you don't pay me anything. My team, you know, we handle it over, you know, the course. It may take us 30, 45 days to clean up your credit, X, Y, and Z, but then we give you the funding. We can get you 50K, X, Y, and Z. And then, hey, the deal can be, hey, you give me 10 of that.
Yeah. And you have that repeat customer.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And like I said, something as simple as that can really change. So it's really understanding again, but to me, that comes back to knowing what type of business I'm in, right? To be able to pull that lever and not just going, well, I see so-and-so's doing that too, so I don't know, I'm charging that too, and I'm offering that. Yeah. And I think that is always gonna, even if it works out the gate long term, leave you confused at some point.
That's a good point. Like, something you said is like, you need to know what you're in the business of doing, right? And so I think a lot of people think about their core offer and they're like, oh, this is what I do. Right. But when it comes to like a system and building a business, a lot of times you have to do something that has nothing to do with the actual offer you're creating. So like, for example, like Alex Hormozy, I was listening to one of his podcasts. He was talking about, He's like, you have to figure out what you're in the business of doing. So the example he uses is like an electrician. He's like, if I bring an electrician in, if I have a business that, provides these services, I need electricians.
Right.
And so he's like, hey, what's your biggest problem? I can't find good electricians. So he's like, okay, how much do you make every time you bring an electrician? And he's like, I profit about $300,000 a year if I have a good, solid electrician that I could sit out in the field. And he's like, oh, wow, you can make $300,000. So then he asks the guy, he's like, what are you doing to attract good electricians? He's like, oh, I have a $500 referral that I give to people if they send people my way.
Right.
He's like, okay, so you're trying to solve a $300,000 issue with a $500 expense, right? And I think a lot of people fail to fix their systems because they never realize, like, what are you in the business of actual doing? But a lot of people can't do that, right? Because they're so stuck in the weeds of the business,
right, they
can never work on the business to figure out what it is that they should be working on. Like, what's the most high value activity that they should be doing? And so one of the things that you teach, especially in this coaching space specifically, is everyone needs to learn how to do one-to-many sales presentations, right? And not everyone, right? Not everyone is necessarily built for it, but you're the type of person, you're like, hey, if you're not built for it, go connect with someone that can sell your offer for you. So talk about that a little bit. Like, when it comes to one-to-many selling, why is that such an important and like good skill set to learn as a coach, consultant, or even an online service provider?
Because of leverage and really just because of common sense. So you have to be able to communicate with any market if you want them to do anything, right? And that's all your sales presentation is. You're just communicating to somebody, right, an individual, why your point of view on this specific topic or area is more effective, how it and how that point of view is going to affect or help or change them in their life. And so we started one-to-one because it's easier to get the reps, right? I can just have a conversation with you and you're really trying to figure out that. And any entrepreneur who started their business and knows that's what happens. You learn a lot in those one-on-one sales calls just on what people's real problem, how they perceive it, what they would pay, just these different things. But as soon as I start seeing consistency and I see that working, I should immediately take that presentation and now give that same presentation to all of the people who have this problem at one time, because there's 8 billion people on the planet. And if I think we can all agree, right, that the more people on the planet that know who I am and how I can help them, the more money I'm going to end up with, even if I'm bad, right? If you can close 50% of the people you talk to and I can only close 1% of the people, we both can make a lot more money if more of the 8 billion people know we exist. If only 10,000 people know you exist, your capacity is only 5,000 customers. Now, 5,000 customers is a whole lot of money, especially in high ticket. But if I can get 10 million people, right, to know who I am, even though I'm only converting 1%, you see what I'm saying? So it's just basic math that once I figured out some type of message that's resonating and it's causing action, I have to go one-to-many, because that's where I'm going to, if you're in the business of helping people, one, be able to help more people. What a lot of people try to do, and it's a form of leverage, but it's still limited, is they go, okay, well, I can't take all these sales calls. My calendar's full. And so then they hire a salesperson and then they fill that person's up and then they hire the next person. And I know all about this because that's what I used to do. I used to have a sales agency, right? I used to train in sales teams. But, and I was talking to an entrepreneur that's big in this space just a few months back, and he was like, we had to turn off ads. He was like, I had to turn off ads because our calendars are booked out. We couldn't handle anymore. Now he's got 25 full-time salespeople for his offer, and they had to shut it off. I'm like, you gotta get to one-to-many, because, and you guys know that when you have that sales call, that sales presentation, you're saying 80 to 90% the exact same thing to each individual person. So why don't I get you all together and just say it so you've all heard it? The same exact thing is going to happen. Whatever people are ready to buy are going to buy. And so, that's really, like I said, it's just leverage again. It gives us a greater output in in return for this amount of time, right? If I got to spend 90 minutes, 3 hours, X, Y, and Z, communicating to the market, I'd love to get, $300,000 back than $10,000.
Yeah.
So that's really what the one-to-many's about.
Yeah. Man, that's a good one. That's a good one. So we know that this event's coming up.
Yep.
We know it's a banger on the way. I'm talking about there will be full transformations happening in just one day. So I'm super excited for that. And so I want to lead this off with this. What is one thing that you plan on having people walk away with after this event?
I hope that the thing that people will walk away with, that I know they'll walk away with, honestly, is first and foremost understanding what freedom looks like, right? Because as we talked about here a little bit, you can't really have freedom if you don't know what that looks like. And I mean in their individual situation. Like some people need structure and rigidness. Some people need flexibility, right, and looseness. Some people need recurring revenue, right, and low interaction with people. Like some people need, high interact. Like, so figuring out first and foremost what freedom is, so that you can actually know what systems to start pulling in and plugging in, because we got the systems king here, right? And that has systems and can help you create whatever systems, but even the systems king can't help you install or use a system if you don't know what the system. You know what I'm saying? We need a system has to be created to do and accomplish something, and so that's one thing I really want them to walk away with. And then once you have that, then it's walking away with the roadmap, knowing exactly what steps, what levers to pull is what I call them, in order to have that happen over the next 90 days.
Wow. That's going to be a banger. And I know that fully aligns, and that's why I wanted to partner with you on this, right? A lot of this stuff is literally about understanding that this is about building something that's real, something that you can pass down. Like everyone blames the children when a business is passed down and a business flops, right? And I always say when I build a business and I pass it down to my children, I don't want them to have to be the CEO for that business to operate. The CEO should already be hired, right? They should be getting an asset. So I know one of the biggest things is getting people to break free. Break free from all of the noise that they see online that is just a bunch of fluff that's just getting, like people are literally have an intention of just getting you to buy their program, right? That's what we're seeing. And so we want people to break free from those poor principles or lack of principles, per se. And then we want people to break free from their business, right? A lot of people build a business that owns them, and it fully contradicts why you built a business in the first place. You wanted more freedom, right? You wanted to spend more time with your kids. You want the vacation when you can. You can't step away from your business for 2 weeks without your phone ringing and you getting pulled in the weeds. And so one of the best things that you can do is be able to do that 2-week test. And so what I want people to be able to do when they walk out of this event, they can take 2 weeks from their business and it doesn't skip a beat. In fact, it probably grows more because you're not involved and you're allowing people to make more decisions. So y'all, this is going to be a banger, something that's going to be amazing for those of you who do join us. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and look, we out. We got a banger on the way.